right here. Oh, there was contact.
The debate has raged in every paddock, every garage, and every comment section for decades. Is the championship won by the rider or by the bike? Every time a factory team rolls out a machine with $250,000 in research and development, the argument shifts one direction. And every time a champion straps a #1 plate to a motorcycle he's never tested and proceeds to dominate, the argument shifts right back. The writers in this video answered that question the most definitive way possible. They switched, they adapted, and somehow they won again. So what exactly does it take to pull that off? Before we get to the riders who pulled it off, you have to understand why switching brands usually goes wrong. A factory bike isn't just fast, it's built around one rider. The way it delivers, the way it turns, the way it reacts when things get sketchy, all of it is dialed in over years. So when a rider switches brands, well, everything changes at once. The power hits different, the chassis feels different, the suspension reacts differently. What used to feel natural suddenly feels off. Even small things, like how the bike picks up out of a corner or settles into a rut, can throw everything off just enough to slow a rider down. And then there's the team. New mechanics, new setup, new way of communicating. You're not just learning a bike, you're learning how to work with an entirely new group of people under pressure. And most riders never fully figure that out. They show flashes, maybe a few good results, and then it fades. Because once that feeling's gone, it's hard to get it back. The riders in this video didn't just adjust, they figured it out, and kept winning anyway. Long before factory bikes were refined, before data, mapping, and all the tech, the rider versus bike debate was already happening, and the first real answer came from Bob Hurricane Hanna. He raced in a different era. Minimal suspension, brutal tracks, no room for mistakes. And he didn't ride smooth. Feet off the pegs, bike all over the place, just muscling it through everything. He wasn't controlled, he was violent on a bike. Hanna joined Yamaha in 1976 and immediately shocked everyone, winning the 125 national title in his first season.
Got him. Bob Hanna wins the Stadium Motocross Championship.
He became the face of the brand, stacking championships and pushing fitness to a level the sport hadn't seen before. Then everything changed. Contract issues, injuries, and a move nobody expected. Hanna left Yamaha and went to Honda. Most riders would need time. He didn't. Different bike, different team, same result. He just kept winning. And he didn't stop there. Late in his career, he won on Suzuki too, against younger riders with better equipment. 3 brands, same outcome. Hanna didn't prove it once, he proved it everywhere. Throughout the early 1990s, McGrath and the Honda CR250 formed a dynasty that the sport had never seen before and hasn't quite seen since. The 1993 iteration of the Honda chassis offered a perfect balance of flex and plush suspension that matched McGrath's smooth, fluid, BMX-inspired riding style, like it had been specifically designed around him.
Antunez is out of contention, and this is the man we were talking about, Jeremy McGrath, and my question still...
He was virtually unbeatable, elevating supercross to unprecedented levels of mainstream popularity while riding a motorcycle he trusted completely and unconditionally. At that point, Honda wasn't just the best bike, it was the safest place to win. Heading into 1997, everything changed. Honda introduced a first-generation twin-spar aluminum frame that felt rigid and unforgiving compared to the steel frame bikes McGrath had mastered. At the same time, tensions over control and endorsements pushed the relationship to a breaking point. McGrath walked away from the most dominant setup in the sport and signed with Suzuki. The move looked like a disaster on paper. The RM250 lacked horsepower, the team had limited time to dial in the bike, and McGrath only managed 2 wins that season. But that wasn't really the point. For the first time, he was proving he could still win without the Honda advantage. Then came Yamaha. When McGrath switched again, this time to Yamaha, the question finally got answered for good. New bike, new team, completely different feel. And yet, the results didn't change. He won championships again, re-establishing himself at the top of the sport on a 3rd brand. At that point, the argument was over. It wasn't the bike, it was just him. Switching brands is hard enough. Doing it while the entire sport is changing? That's different. Ricky Carmichael didn't just switch bikes. He won through the biggest shift motocross had ever seen.
Or other because his first full season of motocross, Carmichael from Budds Creek Motocross.
2 strokes to 4 strokes. Completely different power, completely different feel. Didn't matter. He figured it out and kept winning. He built his early dominance on Kawasaki, mastering the raw, high-revving 252 stroke. Light bike, violent power, perfect for the way he rode. Then he moved to Honda and took it even further. 2 perfect seasons, total control, no weaknesses. But right as he hit that peak, the sport started changing. 4 strokes took over, heavier bikes, smoother power, less margin for error. Didn't slow him down. He adapted and kept winning. Then came the real risk. Carmichael left Honda at the top and went to Suzuki, a team that hadn't won in years. If it didn't work, it would have been the first time he looked beatable. New bike, new program, no guarantees. And still, he won again. Different brands, different bikes, different eras. Same result every time. That's what made Carmichael different. He didn't just win, he proved it didn't matter what he was riding. Up to this point, the riders we've talked about were still making full career switches. New bikes, new teams, new systems to learn. But this next one takes it even further. He jumped on a new bike with barely any time to sort it out, and still went out and swept both motos. If you're looking for proof that raw talent can overpower machinery, this might be the strongest example in the whole video. Most riders in this sport spend their entire careers learning to fit within the limits of a motorcycle. They find a setup that works, fine-tune over time, and stay inside what the bike allows them to do. James Stewart was the opposite. His speed was so far beyond everyone else that the bikes had to be rebuilt around him just to keep up. He didn't ride within the bike's limits. He pushed past them. The way he attacked the track, especially over the front of the bike, put stress on the chassis and suspension that most setups simply weren't designed to handle. What worked for everyone else didn't work for him. At Kawasaki, the team had to build extremely stiff front-end setups just to keep the bike from collapsing under the way he charged into jumps and whoops. Even then, he was riding on the edge of what the bike could physically take. And it worked. He didn't just manage it, he won on it, turning that setup into championships and redefining what was possible at speed.
Won at a very young age, right out of the gate. I mean, dude, it took me 2 years. I didn't win a real...
When Stewart made the move to Yamaha, everything had to change again. Different bike, different feel, different starting point. Yamaha had to completely rethink their setup to match what he needed. Stiffer front-end holdup, more aggressive positioning. Everything shifted forward to suit how he attacked the track. And it worked. New team, new bike, same result. He still won the championship. Later in his career, he made another move, this time to Suzuki, a mid-season switch. Almost no real testing time and no margin to figure it out slowly. Again, did not matter. He showed up, lined up against the best riders in the world, and immediately went 1-1, sweeping both motos. No adjustment period, no easing into it, just instant speed. Across Kawasaki, Yamaha, and Suzuki, Stewart didn't just adapt, he won on all of them. The bikes actually had to adapt to him, and that's what made him different. In today's era, switching manufacturers isn't unusual. Top riders do it all the time. What's rare is winning across all of them. Eli Tomac didn't just adapt to different bikes. He won on every platform he touched. Tomac's rise started on Honda, where he used raw throttle control and rear-wheel drive to power through soft tracks where others got stuck. It was aggressive, it was physical, and it worked. He wasn't just fast, he was different. When he moved to Kawasaki, that's when it turned into dominance. The bike's stability paired perfectly with his strength, especially in late motos when tracks broke down and everyone else started fading. That combination led to championships, and, for a stretch of time, he looked almost unbeatable. Then came Yamaha, and questions followed.
Tomac's got a good drive up the inside. Wide.
Oh, no room!
The YZ450F had a completely different feel than anything he'd ridden before, and plenty of riders had struggled to adjust to it. But Tomac didn't take long to answer those doubts. He answered it the only way that really mattered, by winning championships. More recently, he made another move, this time to KTM. On paper, the biggest adjustment of all. Different frame, different feel, a completely different way the bike handled. A new system, new suspension, new balance points, everything had to be relearned. And still, he found ways to win. That's what separates Tomac from almost everyone else in the sport. He didn't need years to figure a bike out. He didn't need everything built perfectly around him. His speed translated. Honda, Kawasaki, Yamaha, KTM, different machines, but he kept winning. Very few riders in this sport have ever won on 4 different brands at the 450 level, and he didn't just do it once, He did it over time, winning a 450 Supercross main event in 12 consecutive seasons. That kind of consistency across that many changes doesn't happen by accident. He didn't just adapt to the bikes. He made winning travel with him. Riders switch teams all the time in this sport. Again, that's not unusual. But what made Chad Reed different was how often he reset everything, even when he didn't have to. Just as soon as something started working, he moved. Again, new bike, new team, new expectations, you know. And every time, he put himself right back in a position where he had to prove it all over again. That was what sets him apart. Reed's adaptability wasn't effortless, and it wasn't natural. It came from experience, from thousands of laps, from understanding exactly what a bike needed to do, and refusing to accept it when it didn't. He built his career on Yamaha, becoming one of the most recognizable riders in the world, and stacking 35 wins on the blue bikes. For years, he looked like the definition of a perfect fit. Then he walked away from it.
Here comes Reed!
When he moved to Suzuki in 2009, it wasn't a safe decision. It was a reset. Different bike, different feel, a completely different way of attacking the track. And if it didn't work, there was no easy way back. But it did. He was immediately back in the fight, battling for a championship and proving his speed wasn't tied to one machine. Then came Kawasaki. Another change, another adjustment, another system to figure out. And again, he found a way to make it work. Most riders would have stopped there. Reed didn't. When that deal ended, he made one of the boldest moves the sport had ever seen. Without a clear factory landing spot, he built his own team, 22 Motorsports, and lined up against the biggest programs in the world on a Honda. No safety net, no guarantees, and still, he won. Not just managing, not just surviving, winning main events against fully backed factory teams. Against Yamaha, Suzuki, Kawasaki, and Honda, Reed didn't just stay competitive. He won on all of them. 4 brands, 4 completely different bikes. That doesn't happen by accident. He didn't wait for the bike to feel right. He didn't need the perfect setup handed to him. He forced it to work. That's what defined Chad Reed. Not comfort or stability, relentless reinvention, and the refusal to fade away. Adaptability in motocross isn't always about chasing better equipment or bigger contracts. Sometimes it's about survival. Ken Roczen's career didn't just change, it had to be rebuilt after the kind of injury most riders don't come back from. Early in his career, Roczen looked effortless.
There was something really right on that bike. I love that thing. And I had electric start on my bike, until the crash. And then down the road...
On KTM, his smooth European style matched the bike perfectly. Everything flowed. Championships followed. Then came Suzuki, and more success. His trajectory was clear. He was on his way to becoming one of the dominant riders of his generation. Then he signed with Honda. It was supposed to be the next step. Factory support, the best equipment in the paddock, a real shot at taking over the sport. Instead, it nearly ended his career. Roczen suffered devastating arm injuries that required dozens of surgeries. At one point, he came dangerously close to losing his arm entirely. When he came back, he wasn't the same rider physically. And he couldn't be. The bikes hadn't changed, but his body had. Modern factory machines are built to be sharp, rigid, and responsive. They demand everything from a rider's upper body. For Roczen, that became a problem he couldn't ignore. So he made a decision that didn't make sense to most people. He left the factory Honda team and signed with HEP Suzuki, a smaller, less funded program, and went back to a bike many considered outdated. From the outside, it looked like a step backward, but it wasn't. The Suzuki gave him something that others couldn't: control. A feel he could trust, a bike that didn't punish him every lap. For the first time since the injury, he could ride without constantly fighting his own body. And then came Daytona, one of the toughest tracks on the schedule. Long, brutal, no place to hide. And Roczen won. Not just a win, but a statement. Across KTM, Suzuki, and Honda, Roczen had already proven he could be one of the fastest riders in the world. But this was different. This was a rider who rebuilt everything: his bike, his approach, his expectations, and still found a way back to the top. That's what real adaptability looks like. Not chasing speed, surviving it, and finding a way to win anyway. Chase Sexton didn't wait to get pushed out. He saw what was coming, and he moved first. Coming off a 450 Supercross championship with Honda, Sexton was supposed to be the center of their program for years. He had the speed, the title, and the full backing of the factory team. There was still one issue that never fully went away, though. When he pushed the Honda to its limit, the front end could disappear without warning. At the same time, the future was already lining up behind him. Jet Lawrence had arrived. Hunter Lawrence was moving up. Honda wasn't just building around the present anymore. They were building around what came next. And Sexton knew it. So instead of staying and fighting for a position inside a shifting program, he made the call himself.
Fake sense of reality when I was racing 250s and going into that class last year, kind of thinking I could go out there and...
He left Honda while still at the top and moved to Red Bull KTM. New bike, new team, new expectations, and no guarantee it would work. The KTM was a completely different machine, different feel, different balance, a bike that demanded a new approach to how he carried speed and trusted the front end. At first, it showed. There were mistakes, moments where things didn't quite line up, the kind of adjustment period that can quietly derail a rider coming off a championship. But Sexton stayed with it. He worked through it, refined it, figured it out. And when it clicked, it wasn't close. In his first outdoor season with KTM, Sexton took control of the series and won the 2024 Pro Motocross Championship, proving the move wasn't a gamble, it was the right decision. But he wasn't done. After finding success with KTM, Sexton made another move, this time to Kawasaki for the 2026 season. Another reset, another unknown. And once again, he didn't take long to answer the questions. Round 2, Anaheim. First win on the bike. No long adjustment, no waiting period, just results. That's what separates Sexton. He doesn't wait for things to fall apart. He moves before they do. Different teams, different bikes, same outcome. He finds a way to win. And it wasn't just the champions. Across every era, riders kept proving the same thing. Real speed travels. Mike LaRocco won championships on Kawasaki, then showed that same toughness could carry over, winning races for Suzuki and later becoming a cornerstone of Honda's program. Ezra Lusk brought his smooth, precise style across multiple manufacturers, taking premier class wins on Yamaha, Honda, and Kawasaki during one of the deepest eras the sport had ever seen. Ron Leschen made it look effortless, winning on both Honda and Kawasaki with a kind of natural speed that didn't depend on what he was riding. Then there's Justin Barcia, a completely different style, aggressive, high-revving, on the edge, and it still translated. Wins on Honda, wins on Yamaha, and eventually, the first Premier Class victory in history for Gas Gas. Different riders, different styles, different eras, same result. They didn't need the perfect bike. They didn't need the same system. They just needed a way to get to the front. Because at this level, speed doesn't stay tied to one brand. It shows up wherever the rider does. The thing that connects Bob Hanna in the 1970s to Chase Sexton today is not a riding style, physical build, or era of competition. It's a specific type of intelligence, the ability to understand the fundamental mechanics of how a motorcycle transfers weight, rotates through a corner, and responds to throttle input at a level deep enough that those principles remain portable across any brand's specific implementation of them. The riders who failed after switching brands weren't slower or less talented people. They simply had their skills calibrated to one specific machine to such a degree that the recalibration required after moving was more than they could absorb at race speed. And that same pattern is still playing out right now. Riders like Eli Tomac continuing to prove it, winning across completely different machines deep into their careers. The factories matter. The engineering matters. Millions of dollars in research and development produce real and meaningful performance differences that absolutely show up on a stopwatch. But the chassis can't choose its own line. The engine can't decide when to brake. The suspension can't calculate where the next rut is going to form before the rider can see it. Every mechanical advantage a factory team engineers into a race bike ultimately has to flow through the human being hanging off the back of it. And the most complete human beings in the sport's history have proven, repeatedly and across entirely different machinery, that their understanding of how to go fast exists at a level the brand on the side panel simply can't contain. The rider has always mattered more. The champions in this video spent their careers proving it in the most public, measurable way possible, by winning on bikes that were supposed to be wrong for them, surrounded by teams that were supposed to slow them down, in conditions that were supposed to expose their mechanical limitations. The motorcycle gives you potential, but the rider decides what happens with it. And the best riders in this sport have been proving that for decades. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Who proved it the hardest? Thanks for watching, and stay wicked.